Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode.
In today's episode, me and guest Ollie Kent once again play start bench trade, but this time with offensive skill positions. Ollie has a dig at one of his Cardinals NFC West rivals.
This is the Cardinals fan speaking right there.
I just disagree.
And one part leaves us both unstuck as we try and do start bench trade with all of the chosen players. Hope you guys enjoy.
Really tough. I don't like this position of I guess. Trent Williams is 40 years old at left tackle.
Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and today we're doing a part two, if you like, on a previous episode. So back about a month ago, I think it was, me and guest Oliver Kent went through 33 active quarterbacks in the NFL and did our start bench trade sort of game as we did 12 months previously. We're now going to bring you a part two. So Ollie is back with me, and today we are doing start bench trade with offensive skill positions. Ollie, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Can't complain. We're just talking off camera about how warm it was at the moment. It is incredibly warm, has been all week. And yeah, I don't think it's going to get much better throughout the rest of the week, going on to the weekend.
No. It's football on the weekend, so hopefully weather stays nice for that. And then, other than that, I'm hoping it stays relatively cool during the week for work. But yeah.
Absolutely. Now, before we go on to the episode, let's head back to On This Day. Now, in 2020, NFL announced a new day called Juneteenth, which is celebrated as the effective end of slavery in the United States, which stems all the way back to 1863. And in 2020, the NFL introduced the idea to observe it in the NFL. So that means that all league offices will be closed on this day. And also in 1943, the NFL's Philadelphia Eagles and Pittsburgh Steelers merged, but later dissolved on December the 5th. And the likes of C.J. Mosley, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Xavier Rhodes, and Patrick Surtain Sr. were all born as well. Now, last time we did this episode, it was a lot easier. We had 33 callbacks, 32 starting, and then one more to make it, into threes. But I found it an awful lot harder to try and narrow down to 33 when it comes to skill position players. Now, originally, I went through every team, went through which players I felt were worthy of being talked about. I had 85 originally, which is obviously way too much. So what I have done, I've tried the best I can to narrow down some of the players. So I've still got around 68 players, I should say, to choose from. So some players will still do 33. So some players may not be picked. So we may have a whole episode without Justin Jefferson, without Derrick Henry, without Saquon Barkley. But we may get them, you never know. But there's some players I did feel like I should get rid of because I felt like I had to be somewhat bullish and cutthroat. So I've got rid of the likes of Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, Kyle Pitts, Jameson Williams, DeAndre Swift. The hardest one to do, Brian Robinson Jr., Khalil Shakir, Zach Ertz, Hunter Henry, Tony Pollard, Jacoby Myers, Travis Etienne, Nick Chubb, which is a sad state of what he was, what's gone on with him, Calvin Ridley, my boy Mike Gesicki, Jerry Jeudy, as well as Dawson Knox, who I think actually is really underrated, but I had to get some players out. So in the end, we've got 68 players to choose from. I'll quickly go through them as quick as I can, all the players we're doing today. Or maybe I'll do some, and then I'll leave the other ones to surprise. So the first 20 I'm going to include are the likes of James Conner, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, CMC, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Cooper Kupp, Kieran Williams, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Chuba Hubbard, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs, and Jaden Reed. So that is 20 out of the 68 players that I'm going to include today, or hope to include. Obviously, the big names are there. St. Brown, Gibbs, Barkley, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, CD Lamb. They're all going to be there, but we're hoping they'll be actually, in this episode included. Now, you'll see in a minute on the YouTube video, you will see exactly how big this wheel is. Ollie, you can't see this on your end, but for those watching on YouTube, you can see the wheel now. It is, quite the wheel here. We've got all 68 players on there. You can see some names which you may be screaming at the TV going, why is this player in it? But hopefully this should cause some debate in the episode. So we're going to get on to our first 3 players. So let's spin the wheel and find out which players exactly we're going to be trying to pick between in start bench trade. Now, the first one looks like it could be a rookie or sophomore player, I should say. Malik Neighbours is the first player off the board. Now, one thing I will say, I've not included any rookies because, let's face it, they've not yet played a down in the NFL. So on that basis, we're going to keep them away from now, just be a little bit more cutthroat in this episode. Let's go on to the second player. I'll just quickly not deleted Malik Neighbours, but here we are. Second player off the board. Who are we going to get? David Njoku is our second player off the board. So our wide receiver and tight end. Can we get a running back in this final one of 3? Are we going to get a Cardinals player? Ollie? Are we going to get a Dolphins player? Who knows? It looks like we have Mike Evans. In the end, our first start bench trade is Malik Neighbours, David Njoku, and Mike Evans. So, Ollie, I'll let you go first. Who are you picking? Who are you starting? Who are you benching? And who are you trading?
I've got to start Neighbours. Purely because even just after the first year, I mean, he looks electric, really does look electric. Especially the poor QB play that they had there. You sort of say to yourself, what can he do in his second year? What can he do with some more supporting talent around him? So it'd be interesting to see there. And like you say, if he didn't have a Jaden Daniels, he'd be a shoo-in for Rookie of the Year as well. So definitely starting Neighbours. Probably benching, I'd say Mike Evans. I think there's probably obviously some positional bias there as well, like, receivers over tight ends. Tight end, there's only a couple of tight ends who really you probably choose in the league anyway, full stop, over sort of wide receivers. Like a mid to low tight end one probably is on par with a good to mid sort of wide receiver 2 anyway. And then obviously trade Njoku. Njoku probably got a bit of trade value to him anyway. He's had some good spells over in Cleveland, but never really set it alight, to be fair.
That's absolutely fair. I mean, I've gone for Njoku to be traded as well. I mean, I love Njoku, and I do really like him, but there's some injury problems last season. And for me, I just think that for a guy who's not exactly a young tight end anymore, and I just feel like, the injuries are a worry for me. But I've gone differently to you in terms of start and bench. I'm going for starting Evans and benching Njoku. Mentioning Neighbours. Now, Neighbours had a great rookie year, but for me, it's just 1 year, whereas Mike Evans has been the figure of consistency in the last, 8-9 years of his career. 1,000 yards every year. You can always rely on him to get the job done. And I think that if you want...
It's so manufactured, though, the Mike Evans stat. Like when it comes to the end of his career, everyone's going to look back on that. But so many years that he's been, 1,005, 1,006, 1,000. And it's because, even you look at the year that Tom Brady was there, force-fed him the ball in the last game of the season, about, 15 targets in the last game of the season with, going in week 17 against, the Panthers, who've got nothing to play for or whatever. And you sort of just like, do you know what I mean? Like, I get it, it's an impressive stat. It is an impressive stat, but I think there's a bit of manipulation to that stat personally.
I kind of get it from the most recent season, but I think over the course of his career, he's been brilliant. And I think that you want a model professional to be, in your locker room. And I get it. Like, if you want a team for the future, I think absolutely you pick Neighbours. But I think the next 2 or 3 years, I think I'd rather have Evans because he's just model professional. A lot of players can learn off him, and what he brings you, you're guaranteed to get the yards, to get productivity out of him. And I think Neighbours, whilst it's been 1 year, we've seen a lot of receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends have good first years and then crumble away. Shout out to Mac Jones. Shall we get on to our next one?
Go for it.
So we've had 3 off the board. We've got, obviously said before, we're going to be missing a lot of these players out, but we're hoping to get some big dogs in this. And we've got one here is going to be one of two Colts players. It's going to be Jonathan Taylor, who is first off the board. Of course, of Indianapolis Colts fame. Let's get on to our next running back, wide receiver, or tight end. We're looking towards the AFC South. We're going towards Brian Thomas Jr. So our final skill position player is going to be today in this second scenario. It's going to be a Mike Evans teammate, and it's going to be Chris Godwin. So we have Jonathan Taylor, Brian Thomas Jr., and Chris Godwin. Now, for me, I think the trade's pretty easy. I think you trade Chris Godwin. But I think it gets more tricky when it comes to Jonathan Taylor and Brian Thomas Jr. because Jonathan Taylor has been brilliant in the NFL, had a brilliant last 3 years. And I know I said before about Brian Thomas Jr., about Malik Neighbors having 1 year and that's it. But Brian Thomas Jr. was really good. And I feel like you could easily start Brian Thomas Jr. You really could. But I'm going to give the edge to Jonathan Taylor just because, again, it goes down to who's had more tape on the field. Thomas Jr., an amazing first year, but it is 1 year. And I do believe Liam Cohen is going to help, I think, transform his offense. I think what he did with Baker Mayfield was really commendable and really good. Not a fan of how he left the Buccaneers, but I think he's going to elevate this team, especially with Brian Thomas Jr. being the star man. I think we could see him in the next year or so get himself in that sort of top 10 receiver conversation if he isn't already in that conversation. But I think Jonathan Taylor has done more in the NFL for me than Thomas Jr. So I'm going to go for that. Ollie, how about you?
See, again, I think it's the argument about sort of that positional value and those kind of instances. I think for me, I'd rather have a wide receiver one than a running back one. I think as much as QB plays massive factor, we just had the conversation about Neighbors and how you can still be successful even with poor QB playing. It's obviously influential, but for me, a running back really is only as good as, that line that is in front of him. I think that Colts line has been, pretty good over the course of his career. And, I'm not to say, or not to diminish, I guess, as much Jonathan Taylor's accomplishments, but he's had some down years. I think you could argue that maybe his production could be replicated by a bit of committee. I just don't know if you necessarily have that with the Brian Thomas. I think if the Colts maybe had a better QB, we'd be having a different conversation. We'd be saying, well, he's a nice piece on the skill set. But I'd personally start Brian Thomas. I think a team's far more concerned about what Brian Thomas can do to them as opposed to what Jonathan Taylor can do to them. I think you're right, obviously, with Chris Godwin at the back end of his career, sort of just trailing off. You could argue, is there much trade value or whatever? But for me, I'd be starting Brian Thomas and then benching Jonathan Taylor instead.
Interesting. And, we've touched on him there, but, Liam Cohen, I mean, what's your take on him? Because he's had a lot of stick from NFL fans for the whole introductory press conference Duval chant he made, but I think some people have fallen victim of that. Their first press conference goes so badly and then they end up never recovering. Adam Gase being the classic example of the Jets with his eyes. But then Dan Campbell got laughed at the Lions for saying he's going to break some kneecaps, and he's gone on to have a really good coaching career with the Lions. So we saw what he did as a coordinator. Now, coordinators doesn't necessarily translate to good head coaches, as a lot of head coaches have proved. But what's your take on Liam Cohen, someone who has transformed Baker or taken Baker Mayfield even further, up the sort of the QB ranking sort of list? How does he now do with Liam Cohen?
Well, I think we've had these conversations in the QB stuff about QBs on second OCs or second stints elsewhere, and it just takes the right chemistry and stuff. And I think Trevor Lawrence was picked where he was picked because he's believed to be a generational talent, right? It's obviously not panned out that well. I think the Jags have been pretty poorly run just in general. You add Travis Hunter into the mix then with a Brian Thomas Jr. as well. I think it's quite a nice offense, to be honest with you. It'd be interesting to see what happens. I think the AFC South in general is a relatively poor division. So it'd be interesting to see what they do there. But I don't buy too much into the whole introductory press conference thing and that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, it's what's done in the meeting rooms, it's what's done with the players, it's all that kind of stuff. You know, you could have the perfect introductory press conference, but if you're not, putting in the work or good at what you do, not going to matter.
It's true. It's true. I think I think you're bang on the head. And one thing I'll touch on quickly is our quiz question we gave out in last week's episode. Now, I did say our next episode would be our top 10 worst ever Super Bowl winning head coaches with Ben Isaacs. Now, this is coming later on in the month. It just happened to be something went on. It was my fault and why we didn't record the episode on the day. So we're bringing that to you later on in the month. But we asked a question as to, since the completion of the 2025 NFL draft, who is the most sold NFL jersey in the UK and Ireland? The second place being Josh Allen, third place Lamar Jackson. And we asked you, who was number one? Now, we had a lot of guesses. We had some Shedeur Sanders guesses, but the right answer was Travis Hunter. Now, I want to give shout out to the ones who got it right. Now, first of all, Facebook, no one guessed it right. So come on, guys, what are you doing on Facebook? But on Instagram, Steve McGuinness, friend of the show, he correctly answered Hunter. And on Twitter, friend of the show, Freddie Harper Davis, also correctly guessed Travis Hunter. And we will bring you our next quiz question in our next episode, which will be ranking all 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, let's head on to our third scenario and see which players we get off the board. None of the big dogs have come yet. The one could be coming just now, or is it going to be missed? We just missed the packet. We're getting Brandon Ayuk as our first player to try and play this game with. Who is the next player off the board? Again, we just missed Justin Jefferson. We've got Aaron Jones as our next skill position player. And our final player, we'll just spin for it now, is going to be Michael Pittman Jr. So you have Brandon Ayuk, Aaron Jones, and Michael Pittman Jr. Ollie, your turn to go first. How you see this?
Not a good one to go first for. I mean, I think for me, it's really tough. Again, like it's this positional value thing, I guess. Aaron Jones is probably, it's quite tough actually, but not for the reason of they're all really good. They're actually all a bit sort of middling. If I quite like Michael Pittman. I think again we talk about that QB relationship with sort of receiver success. I think he's been steady. I think he'll probably have he'll have a 10-year career, right? Like he'll have a 10-year career, over 10+ year career. He'll have over 10,000 yards, but he'll never potentially be that eclipse guy. So you're looking at sort of like a low end 1, top end 2 kind of guy. I think Aaron Jones is such a mixed bag, I'd probably want to move on from Aaron Jones, just based on sort of maybe, his body of work and again what a running back is. But then Brandon Ayuk as well, like again, is such a mixed bag. So I think if I was moving forward, if I was, a GM or I was looking ahead, I'd probably obviously start Michael Pittman. I think just between age and I guess his success, and I think as well, like fair play to him, success in a system that's not particularly been fantastic. I'd then again, just from a sort of positional value perspective, going to have to go by Ayuk as a bench and trade Aaron Jones.
I've gone for the exact same. I think Aaron Jones, you look at his career, it's been up and down, as you say. I mean, looking at his stats in particular, I mean, he had over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns, in the most recent season, 2024. But with the last 2 years of the Packers, he had 4 touchdowns combined, and he had 1,000 yards in 2022, but had 656 in the 2023, and in 2021 he had 799. And I think as well the fact that he is, 30 years old as a running back, they're not all Derrick Henry, they're not all going to last till they're 33, 34. And I think other than that, I think Ayuk and Pittman, I think, is a bit of a coin flip. I think Ayuk has had some great numbers. Obviously, fell off a little bit last year because of the injuries. Only played 7 games. But I think Pittman, what he gives you, whilst I don't think he is, I think he is probably, if you're ranking receivers, number 1 receiver, he probably is 25th or 26th. But as a wide receiver 2, he would be easily top 5, top 10 best second choice receiver. I think as a WR2, he would be unbelievable as a second choice receiver. A bit like a Jordan Addison, a bit like a Jalen Waddle. I just feel like, but I think what you're obviously looking at his stats in particular as well, for going by purely stats based, year 1, 503, but then year 2, 2021, over 1,000 yards. 2022, just under 1,000 yards. 2023, 1,152 yards. And in 2004, 809 yards, 18 touchdowns across those 5 seasons. And with realistically 17 touchdowns across 4 seasons, it's pretty good.
I think there's something as well just to be said, I think, on that Pittman debate, and maybe I've been slightly guilty of it too with some of the other discussions that we've had, but everyone prefers the lightning rod receiver, right? Okay, everyone likes a Neighbors or a Brian Thomas because they could get 10 targets, and if 2 of them amount to 80 or 100 yards and a touchdown, that's perceivably better than Michael Pittman catching 8 of 8 for 70, right? Like we like the big plays, we like the flashy plays, we like the sexy plays, and it's the same potentially with Mike Evans. It's the same with Larry Fitzgerald was a bit of a different character when he was sort of in his prime or whatever. But even like a Kelsey at tight end or whatever, like these kind of bigger bodies of work kind of guys who are just consistent. They're there, they get the ball. They're not as flashy and they don't create that appeal on Sundays on TV, but they're still good players, right, in their own right. So I think Pittman probably is, like we said, that lower end number 1 receiver, but you can't just discredit him because of his style of play and what he's like as a player, I guess.
I think as well, I think if you want, since if you're front office or coach, I think you want a personality.
Yeah,
he's perfect because I had a little bit of trouble last year with the contract stuff. Aaron Jones seems perfectly nice, but I think Pittman for me seems the model professional. According to what I've seen his girlfriend talk about, or now wife, I think. He doesn't like going out, doesn't like clubbing.
He's a great character guy. I mean, look, that's indicative of who his dad is, right? Okay, like he's an NFL, family kind of guy. They're going to be like that, right? They always are. It's very rare outside of Dion's his own character, isn't he? I guess when Shador is sort of emanates from him as well. But you look at these NFL kids, these juniors who then get into the league. They're every bit the same as their dads, and they understand the business. They understand what's required in the professional world. So, you are spot on. He is exactly what you want in a locker room.
Right, let's head on to our next set of 3 skill position players. Let's spin the wheel. Oh, wait, let's do it now. Let's spin the wheel. Who is the first player going to be off the board? We've got a sophomore player in Lad McConkey of the Los Angeles Chargers. So our next player is going to be, we have our first big hitter. We have Saquon Barkley, Defensive Player of the Year. Arguably should have been MVP and had 2,000 yards, one of 9 players to ever do this, and had by far the best season of his career. Now, who's going to be the third player? Will it be another big hitter? Will we get Justin Jefferson? Will we get Jamar Chase? Or will we get someone like, we've got Tyreek Hill. So we've got Tyreek Hill, Saquon Barkley, and Lad McConkey. Now, I think the trade's pretty easy. I think, actually saying that, this is going to surprise people. I'm going to trade Tyreek Hill.
That's where you say that's a surprise. That was the easy part for me. I think that's the easy part.
I just think that, he's just not the player he was. And I think everything he's brought, particularly this offseason, more than any other I've seen in recent years, a lot of trouble behind the scenes. And I feel like, I think you bench Lad McConkey and you start Saquon. I mean, McConkey,
it's tough. It's tough.
I'm going against the whole rookie, not done much sort of thing. But if I'm honest, the whole Tyreek Hill summer he's had, all the off-season distractions, as good as he has been, he's been one of my favourite ever Dolphins players. I just feel like, has he got anything left in the tank? I don't know. I think he's got potentially one good year left in him. I think he could have one final swan song if everything goes right, which is a big if. If everyone stays healthy in this Dolphins team, I do think we could surprise people and make a wild card spot, which I think is unlikely, but you never know.
I think you're delusional.
I just again, and I think Barkley's been the best running back this season. Don't think he's the best running back in the league. I'll get onto that later on if this player comes up. But I think certainly over McConkey, that's an easy decision.
I think, again, and it's dispositional bias. I think as well, like you've got to understand that supporting cast. Like, Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia is perfection, right? It is quality. I think the only thing there is obviously Barkley with his career, total yardage isn't that dissimilar to sort of, an Aaron Jones, right? He's had injuries, he has ups and downs. He's clearly talented. There's a reason he got picked where he got picked. I just think he's obviously been very much beneficiary of what is ultimately one of the best O-lines in the league and has been for some significant time, right? Again, if you put someone sort of if you put Aaron Jones in that position, yeah, okay, he's probably going to get 1,500 yards in that offense, right? Okay. Is he going to get 2,000? Probably not. Like, he's not going to hurdle over anyone backwards and all those kind of things, right? But you can't remove that from it. There's a reason that he wasn't as good at New York, but he was still very much top 10 running back at New York. I think the thing is with Tyreek Hill, like, I think you could argue over the last 10 years, he's been one of the best receivers in the NFL. Like, if there was an all-decade team over the last 10 years, he would be in it. Right? Like, he is genuinely, and again, it goes back to that previous point about, I guess, the explosives and the sexy plays and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's Tyreek Hill in a nutshell, right? He's been electric. He's been so fast, burner, all of these things. And I think you're right, though. Like, at this point in his career, it sounds bold, but even at this point in his career, I don't even know if he's the best receiver on his team. You could make a case that someone like a Waddle potentially better than him at this point, right? Okay. I know that's bold. I really like Lad McConkey. I think, again, he's been a beneficiary of having Herbert. I think as well what he's achieved in that first year with Harbaugh, who's run the ball, play defense kind of coach, to be able to do what he did is still impressive. So I think I'm probably going to agree with you, though. It's hard not to put Saquon there, then put Lad, and then go Tyreek.
There's one caveat to all of this, Ollie. Saquon's on the Madden cover. That could change everything in a year's time, because McCaffrey sort of brought back the Madden curse to NFL, and I think that they're basically the same player, McCaffrey and Barkley. Both have injury problems at teams where they're the bell cows. They go to teams where they're no longer the bell cow. They're just one of many great players. They have their best seasons, their careers. McCaffrey in 2023, Barkley in 2024, and then McCaffrey's on the front cover of Madden. Now Barkley's been handed over the baton of the Madden curse mystique, and he could, with his injury problems in New York, they could come back and he could be another victim of the Madden curse. But he could prove everyone wrong with that offensive line, and he could go on and have another good year.
No, 100%. He definitely could.
Right, let's head on to our next three players on the wheel. Who is first off the board? We've got Chase Brown. Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. The Canadian running back of the Bengals is the first name off the board. Who is next? Let's spin the wheel. So we've just missed Stephon Diggs. We've just missed a Cardinals player. We're going on to the 49ers, and we have Christian McCaffrey as our second choice. Speaking of McCaffrey, he's just turned up. Who is the third player off the board? Is it going to be three straight running backs? It looks like it could be. We've just missed Ken Williams. We've got Puka Nacua. So we have Puka Nacua, Chase Brown, and Christian McCaffrey. Now, Ollie, on to you first.
So who's the last one?
Puka Nacua.
Okay, yeah. It's interesting because we have these conversations about injuries and stuff like that, and Christian McCaffrey and what he's achieved. Again, it's sort of very similar. Like, there's that injury bug. He's had one spectacular, and he's clearly a very, talented guy. I think obviously a lot of his stuff is more in the pass game. But again, he's been a beneficiary of that 49ers. I think Chase Brown's the easy trade here, just with where he's at. Obviously, he's been behind Joe Mixon and sort of spelled, and who knows? This could be his offense, but I think this could be year for him to go off. But with what they've done in terms of signing T Higgins, you've got Jamar Chase there and Joe Burrow, they're going to be slinging that, right? Okay. And then you're going to have to say Puka Nacua is the starter. But again, I think coming off a slightly worse year, really exploded out. But also as well, there's no Cooper Kupp there now, right? Is Cooper Kupp going to be the one who drew a lot of the attention and Puka got less of the attention and stuff? How's that going to impact it? So it's a tricky one, but I think obviously, you have to go with Puka. You have to say bench Chris McCaffrey, and you have to say trade Chase Brown.
Interesting. Now, I've gone for Chase Brown as well to trade. I just think that I like him, and he was, I think, had good moments at the Bengals last year when they were struggling. But I think compared to these other two players, it's not even a contest. But I still have faith in McCaffrey's going to get back to his best next year. I still have this faith. I think he's had one bad injury year, but he had injury problems at the Panthers, and then it did change. So I still think he's now no longer got the Madden curse. It's been passed over to Barkley. And again, I think you're right about Nacua. It's what happens when you're the number one. I mean, we've seen many players. I mean, Tony Pollard was a great example of this at the Cowboys. When he was a number two behind Zeke, he was fantastic. He was really good. And then Zeke leaves. He's on his own as a sole running back, and he doesn't do that well. And he's off to Tennessee a year or two later. And I think McCaffrey, I still have faith that he can be the guy once again. And I think he's got enough body of work to show me that he can get back to full health. I think the Niners actually are a team that are being slept on. I think in terms of this season coming up,
I just and maybe it's the bias.
This is the Cardinals fan speaking right now.
I just disagree. I can't get behind it.
Have you seen their schedule? Have you seen how easy?
I know. But I just think, I just think Brock Purdy's been such a beneficiary of, he's had the Avengers around him for how many years. Chrissy McCaffrey's knee is now made of jelly. George Kittle's getting on. You lose Deebo Samuel, but by early indications from Washington, probably not a bad decision to move on from. He looks massive. Brandon Ayuk, I don't think's as good as others. I just don't know. I think it's relying a lot on Shanahan. They've lost a lot of pieces on that defense. I think they had something like 7 comp picks in the draft, which just indicates what they've lost. I just think they're going to that coaching talent and some of the talent they've got there is going to naturally make them all right, but they're just not going to be this powerhouse anymore. I just think, it's going to fall off. The wheels are going to come off.
I think Rob Saleh's back now as DC, but I think look at their defense. They've still got Fred Warner, still got Nick Bosa, obviously some young players there like Mikael Williams being drafted. But I think, Trent Williams is still there. I think
Trent Williams is 40 years old at left tackle.
He's still there. He's still rocking it.
But you say this. You say they're still there, yeah, okay. You look at the injuries and the stuff they suffered last year. It was only really McCaffrey, right, okay? Brock Purdy still had George Kittle to throw to. Trent Williams was still playing, yeah, right. Ayuk was still there. It was still they didn't just fall apart. It's not like the injury plug just completely butchered them or whatever. They struggled a little bit.
I mean, you got Juwan Jennings, who I think is really underrated. Ricky Pearsall could be set for a breakout year, and I think there's some players I said before on defense that could turn the corner and have career years. So I think they had this issue in 2020, and then they came back next year and made the NFC Championship game. They made the playoffs at least. So I think people are quick to write them off. McCaffrey has proved enough times during his career that whilst he can't win the big one, he can at least make a team competitive and win your games in the regular season. And going back to our schedule, I know you've got the Seahawks, which could be one way or the other with Darnold.
I think the division alone is tough, and that's from us as well. Okay, that's from a Cardinals fan. It's basically everyone's pointing guns at each other. Like everyone could equally take 2 wins against each other, and you could end up with a dead tie in the division. Like everyone could go 1-1 against each other in a divisional record, right? And then you start to look at who they've got to play outside of the division.
But that's what I mean. Though you've got the Saints, the Giants, you got the Panthers, the Browns, the Titans, the Colts, the Bears. No one knows how they're going to be second year with Caleb Williams. The Falcons, Penix is got a small sample size. I don't particularly see much of him so far. The Cardinals, your team. I mean, Kyler Murray can be hit and miss. Although week 3, you might be okay at that point. Texans bad O-line, that could be a trap game for the Texans. And I think that those games alone, the Jags as well, I think they could be easier team. That's one of those pretenders that make the playoffs that aren't actually that good. But I just think that with the schedule they've got, and I think they are actually the bookies' favourites to win that division. If I'm wrong, certainly it's close with the Rams in terms of the odds.
I think it might be the Rams. It might be the Rams.
Yeah, but I think that schedule makes them at least, and I think they'll be. If I was shocked if they've got a winning record, I think that's very possible for me. So I think the Niners, for me, we'll get onto it more in our season predictions, but I think don't knock them out, don't rule them out. Right, let's head on to the next 3. We've so far done 12 skill position players. We've got about 20 more to go. And our first player is Jaylen Warren of the number 1 back there after the departure of the G. Harris to the Chargers. Who is next on the board? We have another one of the big dogs. We have Jahmyr Gibbs off the board. And the final one, once my Mac works, let's spin the wheel now. Our third player is going to be... we're coming towards the Dolphins. We have Jalen Waddle is our final player. So we have Jalen Waddle, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jaylen Warren. And I think for me, this is the easiest one so far. You start Jahmyr Gibbs, you bench Jalen Waddle, and you trade Jalen Warren.
Yeah, I think that's bang on. I was worried for a second you were going to say the easiest one so far. You're going to say Waddle. No, you're right. And I think, look, credit again. I didn't mean it when I said it earlier. I think at this point, you could make a case that Jalen Waddle is going to be the best receiver on that Dolphins team. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is such a weapon. And I just think that if you wanted to win now, you take Jahmyr Gibbs, right? And then, Jalen Waddle's a nice piece. He's probably a lower end number 1, maybe at this point, coming up to mid number 1. But Jalen Waddle, Jahmyr Gibbs has got to be at least sort of a top 5 running back, I'd have thought, in the league at this point. And then Jaylen Warren is Jaylen Warren.
Totally agree. Jahmyr Gibbs got a new number, of course. He's now wearing number 0.
Yeah.
Should be cool to see how he does with that number. Swiftly moving on to the next 3. Who are we going to get first of all? And we're not going to get DeAndre Swift. I thought we were going to get a no pun intended then, but we've got Nico Collins as our first off the board, the Houston Texans wide receiver. Who is next off the board? We have DJ Moore is the second player. On to our third. We have one of the most improved players from 2024, and that is Chuba Hubbard. We have Chuba Hubbard, DJ Moore, and who's the third? I've actually forgotten who it is.
Nico Collins, DJ Moore.
That's the one. Thank you. The Nico Collins, Moore, and Chuba Hubbard. Ollie, you go first. Who are you picking?
This is probably one of the toughest ones, to be fair. It is tough, actually. It is really tough. I think there's a bit of a risers and fallers conversation maybe here about who's on the up and who's maybe on the other way heading down. It's really tough, but I think I'd probably start Nico Collins. I think he's really quite underrated. I think he's a really solid player. He's also benefited a lot from CJ Stroud. DJ Moore has had a pretty good career, to be fair to him. I think he's been let down by some subpar QB play. Be interested to see what Ben Johnson does with him. I don't know if he's still at the point in his career where he can do some of the more gadget stuff in terms of the end arounds and, the more creative stuff in terms of screens and things like that. I think Chuba Hubbard's had a nice sort of pick up. But again, I think it's just that argument about running backs in production. Like, you expect a starting running back in the league to be sort of cracking that 1,000-yard mark. You know what I mean? So I think for me, yeah, look, I'm probably going to start Nick. I'm probably going to bench DJ. I'm going to trade Chuba.
Yeah, I've gone for the same. I've gone for start Nico Collins, DJ Moore to bench, and Chuba Hubbard to trade.
It's really close, that between DJ Moore and Nico Collins, to be fair.
Yeah, I found it really hard to pick. It was just, I think, if I'm honest, I went for personality over anything else. Because I think DJ Moore had a little bit of a worrying sign when it comes to, when it comes to sort of how I think last year there were points in the points in the season when there was times he looked disinterested. He looked like he was sulking on the sidelines. I think there was one play where he sort of gave up on a play midway through it happening. And I think I could be wrong, but I'm not seeing anything like that with
Nico.
Now, the reason I sound so fluttered now is I've just realised that actually the recording of the spin the wheel actually stopped. So for those audio listeners, it doesn't affect you, but for those watching on YouTube, we do apologise. We'll have to, just put some pictures on instead because, that is something that didn't happen last time. We did this for 45 minutes, 50-minute recording when it comes to our quarterback episode, but for some reason in our this time around didn't record the whole way through. So we're going to try again and bring the reel back to the visual. So let's head on to our next. Turns out for some reason it's not working at all. So we're going to have to go through the rest of it just through the eyes of your imagination. We've got the first quarter of an hour, half an hour into the episode without having this issue, but now we're going to have the rest of the episode without seeing the wheel. So apologies for those who are watching on YouTube. Let's head on to our next three. So first up is going to be Josh Jacobs, formerly the Raiders and now the Green Bay Packers. And a great 2024 season with the Green Bay Packers. Who is next on the list? We've got another running back in David Montgomery. And who is finally going to be taken off this list. Still got the big hitters, still got them, but I think we're about to get one now. No, we're getting his teammate instead. We're getting new Dallas Cowboys wide receiver, George Pickens. So we have George Pickens, not Drake London, we have Josh Jacobs, and we have, oh my God, who is a player I've just...
you got Josh Jacobs, Dave Montgomery, George Pickens.
Montgomery, that's one. Sorry, my writing's not... I try and rush the writing and try and get it down quickly and actually forget who I've written down. So yeah, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, and George Pickens. Ollie, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, it's an interesting little group, this one. I think the biggest issue is George Pickens is the talents there. It's just what about him being just an utter head case, I guess, is the real issue. He's a fantastic deep threat. Be interesting to see what he does in Dallas, especially with Dak. And then also CD. I think Dave Montgomery is just been steady. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, it's Jahmyr Gibbs is the main guy, and Montgomery does sort of more the heavy lifting, the 1 yard line. I think Josh Jacobs has been solid. I think Josh Jacobs has been really, really solid. I think for me, probably starting Josh Jacobs and benching George Pickens, but you'd be inclined to trade him as the others have, and then I'm probably trading Dave Montgomery.
Fair. I mean, I've gone for trading Pickens because I just feel like, unlike the other two, the personality traits of Pickens don't appeal to me maybe as much as others. And I think that, obviously, if you had the numbers of a Jefferson, the numbers of a Barkley, maybe you could have him starting. But then I don't think his numbers quite quantify his behaviour off the field. So I'm going to trade Pickens, and then I'm going to bench Montgomery because I do feel like he's been a fantastic RB2 for the Lions. I think that what I've loved is from both him and Gibbs is that they both seem to care about the team and they seem to support each other, which I think you really want from a particular RB2. A lot of RB2s could be, trying to get themselves a starting role, trying to mouth off, but I think Montgomery's been a model professional and been really good for his Lions team. And then Jacobs, has been brilliant, great for the Raiders, had a bit of a down year or two, but then he's come to the Packers and had a resurgent year. And I think that he is, definitely someone that I think Montgomery's the guy you want for your team, but Jacobs is the guy that can win you games sometimes. So, yeah, give me Jacobs as the starter there. So, we're now, let's see, so we've got 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. I think we've got 27 written down so far. We've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 12. Yeah, so we've basically got 2 rounds left. So, we're right at the end of the episode. Players we've got left, still got some big names. You've got Travis Kelce, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, Kieran Williams, Trey McBride, Garrett Wilson, James Cook, DK Metcalf, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry. We got a lot of good players left. A lot of players we're not going to include today. Maybe all those players I just mentioned aren't going to be even mentioned in this ranking. Let's get on to our final lot of 2 games. Who have we got first? So our first guy is going to be, we got him in. I got my guy in. Derrick Henry is first off the board. I'm glad I've got him in. Who is next on the list? We've got the Packers. Jaden Reed, our second player. We've just missed TD down, but we've got Travis Kelce. So all you Swifties, we're very happy to hear he is being picked. So in the end, we have Jaden Reed, Travis Kelce, and Derrick Henry. Now, for me, I think this is pretty easy. I think you trade Jaden Reed. Actually, I thought you trade Travis Kelce because, first of all, his numbers are down. He's not the tight end he once was, and also you'd be sort of probably getting some trade value because of the guy he is, his name, and the kind of attention and new fans you might bring to the team, whoever you trade. So I think trade Kelce. Sadly, I think he's one of the best tight ends of all time, arguably the best of all time, but I think he is showing for me a lot of signs of decline. And also, I think he is going to retire, especially if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year. I think he's going to retire into the sunset. Then I bench Jaden Reed because I do feel like I love Jaden Reed. I think he's really good. He's one of my favourite young receivers to watch. But Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. Everyone who knows me and the podcast will know my feelings on Derrick Henry. Absolutely love the guy. My favourite ever NFL player. And I think he still got it. He sort of defied the recent trend of running backs getting bad with age. He seems to be getting better with age. Almost like a Ronaldo sort of figure in terms of the way he treats his body. His numbers are getting as good as he gets older when a lot of players would down tools and decline. And yeah, had one of his best years last year when everyone thought he was on the way down after his last year with the Titans. Think of his stiff arm, think of his size and the kind of speed he's got for his size in that position. Not many running backs have that size. You wouldn't be mistaken if you think he was a linebacker, if you saw him in the flesh and didn't know.
Bigger than a linebacker. More
yeah.
Like He's huge.
I mean, what a guy. I could wax lyrical all day about Derrick Henry. So yeah, for me, pretty easy. Start with Henry, bench Jaden Reed, and trade Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's obviously start Derrick Henry. I think everything you said about sort of his impressive career, where he's been, even playing for the teams that he's been at, and again, I think if you put him on that Eagles, he probably has the exact same sort of production or better than Saquon, and he's defied it, for a very long time. I think this may probably differ slightly. I think Jaden Reed, you're absolutely right that Travis has fallen off a little bit, but even then, right, even with that fall off, he's still a top 10 tight end. And I think actually as well, like when we talk about fall off, and it goes back to the discussion earlier about bigger bodies and sexier plays and stuff like that, it's not to say that he's not a good receiver and he can't get open, he can't make catches and those kind of things, because he can do that. it's just he's no longer special after the catch, I think. Right? He hasn't got that juice after the catch. If Mahomes needs 10 yards, you know who's going to get the ball, right? Okay. If you need a big play to change the game and turn it upfield, and it's not going to be him. Yeah, it's not going to be him. And that's fine, right? Okay. I just think Jalen Reed, I just think he's a fairly solid wide receiver too. Probably at the lower end wide receiver too. I would happily go with start Derek, bench Travis, and probably Jalen Reed.
Fair play, fair play. We're on to our final spin of the wheel. Let's see who we can get in the final 3 players here. As I said before, a lot of big names still on the board, but one of them is about to come up. We've got AJ Brown as our first name off the board. What a season he had once again for the Eagles. What a trade that is for the Eagles. One that has crippled the Titans franchise. And I promise I'm not lying here. Our second player is CeeDee Lamb. What a start to this one. 2 of the best receivers. Easily 2 of the top 10 receivers in the league. Great players. And then finally, we've got Stone Cold George Kittle as our final one of the 3. So we have George Kittle, CeeDee Lamb, and AJ Brown. Ollie, I'll let you do the honours.
I'm going to start CeeDee Lamb. I think he's been exceptional. He really is good. Just the body of work as well, what he's been able to achieve. He's fantastic. AJ Brown, like you mentioned, it's a good trade. It is a good trade. And he's had some really good years. I just think if I had to choose between the 2, I'd rather have CD over AJ. And then I think, look, George Kittle, I think he has been good. He's been very, very good. I just think he's probably on the back end of his career. And he has still had some decent production. Don't get me wrong. Again, how much of that is the Shanahan? I think the other thing that's slightly underrated in this, when we say skill players, is, Kittle's a tremendous blocker. Really is a good blocker. And that value is there. You'd want to keep all of these guys, realistically, even at these stages of their respective careers. But yeah, I'd go CD start, AJ bench, and Kittle trade.
Yeah, I've gone for the exact same. Because I feel like, I think even a Kittle in his prime, I would still take a prime Lamb, a prime AJ Brown. And I'm glad you said about Lamb, because we did a Washington Commanders, Philadelphia Eagles preview game ahead of the title game in the NFC. And everyone was saying that the best 2 receivers in the division were there, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin. And I want to shout out people on the show like Jarlath, Cam McFarlane, Steve McGinnis, Dan North. But I put out there that Lamb was the best receiver in the NFC. So no one, they all laughed at me. Everyone laughed at me. Well, you aren't laughing now, are you? I think Lamb is fantastic. I think, easily in the top 5 conversation for wide receivers. I think you got Jefferson, you got Jamar Chase, but I think that's a good spot. I'm probably forgetting someone, but you could easily have Lamb in that conversation for the 3rd best receiver in the league. And I think, I think what I love about him is he's not. I wouldn't say, I could be wrong. He's a lot of team often in padding. He doesn't strike me as like a picky, muscly guy like AJ Brown.
He's big. No, they're different bodies. Like they are different bodies.
I just feel like Lamb, I think he's really good at getting in sort of tight positions. I think he can change direction really well. And I feel like Lamb has also one of the best hands out of all the receivers. I think he's fantastic, I think. That is our final round. But I think I want to give you a bonus round, the audience, because we've had some big names not mentioned yet. We've had not Jamar Chase not been mentioned, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So what I'm going to do is a bonus one. I'm going to give us 2 the chance to do one more as we give these 3 beasts a chance to be ranked. So we've got Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and also Jamar Chase. Tough one because they're all some of the best receivers in the game. Ollie, how are you seeing this? Who do you start? Who do you bench? Who do you trade?
I mean, you've got to start Jamar Chase there.
Really? Over Jefferson?
Yeah, Triple Crown. What he's done has been exceptional. I think, again, it does come to that caveat of who's throwing the ball, right? Okay. But what Jamar Chase has been able to do is really exceptional from playmaking perspective as well, not just a receiving perspective. I think then you go Justin Jefferson and then you go Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think it's easier when you've got all three in the same position to sort of maybe do that ranking. Like, there's some other characters that you could really make good arguments for, in terms of if you had to compare, I don't know, Brock Bowers and a Saquon and then a Jamar Chase, then it becomes a real sort of challenge. I think those receivers for me, that's how I would break it down. I don't see how you can't say Jamar Chase isn't arguably one of the best offensive players. Really, it's Saquon deserved it last year, but you could argue that Chase was even better than that.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, I think if I look at the best receiver seasons in the last 5 years, 6 years, I think I look at Cooper Kupp 2021, I look at Tyreek Hill in 2023, and I look at Jamar Chase in 2024. Amazing season. So that is where we'll end the wheel. So there we are. Ollie, first of all, thank you for coming on.
No, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure too. Good to have you on. We'll be having you on again later on in the off-season for hours in the Cardinals season preview, alongside, hopefully, friend of the show as well, Sam Morgan. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And this will be sort of one of our last off-season episodes. We're going to bring you a return for the third year running, or maybe the fourth year running, of our ranking quarterbacks from 32 to 1 with friend of the show, Sam Moores. And then me and Ben Isaacs will bring you our top 10 worst ever Super Bowl winning head coaches. Then after that, we'll full steam ahead with our season predictions and season preview episodes, where once again, we're getting a season preview episode for every team with a fan of that team. So yeah, looking forward to bringing you that once again. A busy month. Looking forward to that a lot. But in the meantime, don't forget to use code Andy5 at checkout at Fantasy Game Day app. And don't forget to like the podcast, share the podcast, leave a review if you can, because that does help the podcast massively. And also subscribe on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But in the meantime, this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast, our start bench trade, offensive to skill positions, with your host today, Andy David, our guest, Ollie Kent, and we'll see you guys next time.